Všetky podcasty ZAPO sú nevhodné do 18 rokov. A vo všetkých čakaj okrem klasickej reklamy aj platené partnerstvo alebo umiestnenie produktov, pretože reklama je náš jediný príjem.
One of the things that I love for my son, who's about to turn 9 years old, is we walk out the door of our home and he can meet people from anywhere in the world. He can eat food from anywhere in the world. He can see people at all socioeconomic levels in the world, again, all on that one block, all in the neighborhood. And that gives you this huge leap in the world where you're absorbing that at a moment in your life when that's all you can do. It's just everything is an input at that age. And so if you have the chance to be there when you're younger, it's amazing. And if you haven't, I would agree. If you get the chance to be there for, a few years to sort of see the hustle, to see the culture, to see the globalness of the city, it really helps you. It helps in recruiting. It helps in sales. I mean, these people on the streets selling, from the food trucks. I mean, some of the biggest hustlers in the world. I love it. I mean that in a great way. They're building a life there. They're working with themselves and they're doing something that's really hard and they're solving a major problem for people. They're feeding them. It's a big deal. And so I do think that's something that's pretty special in New York. I'm sure you can find versions of it elsewhere, but like I said earlier, I'm a little biased. So I agree with Lex. You should live in New York.
Usually the people overseas think about Eastern Europe like tech hub and talented people. So I guess it was your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know a lot of founders who are from this region who have come and immigrated to the US. There's actually a very famous Macedonian founder named Ilir who founded a company called Slice in New York. It's quite big. So I know a bit about the region from that. We know there's a lot of technical talent here. People work with development teams and design shops, things like that. I think one of the challenges in most regions in the US, though, is that the markets themselves for sales are not quite big enough, are not necessarily big enough. And so you need to be able to expand beyond one country or two. You have to cover the whole region. You want the 200 million people in the region, not the 15 million in a country or something. And we've learned over the years that can be very hard. We've seen it across Latin America. You'd think everybody mostly speaks Spanish or Portuguese. It'd be easy to go between, countries, similar to going cross-border in the US, but it's not. There's more cultural difference. There's rails, payment gateways. And so it just takes a bit more work.
Could you tell us more about the thinking about entrepreneurship and the mindset at the beginning? And the thing is that we are in Greece. Our founders are from Slovakia. So super small ecosystem. Yeah. And in a global wise, EU is a small ecosystem as well. We are talking about, hey, founders, let's think global. And coming from the US, how is it for you guys over there? Are you always thinking about global, or when you start local, it's already the huge market? Yeah. How is this feeling launching the startup over there and thinking about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So prior to being a venture capitalist and running my fund, I was on the founding team of a company called WeWorku, and people probably know the story. They've seen the movies, whatnot. You can believe about 80% of it. The parties, the hustle, the grit, the work, it was all real. It was a little bit of the timeline shifted around. But what I'll tell you is when we started WeWorku, it was called WeWorkuNYC.com. It wasn't WeWorku. It was very focused. And I think there's a, Paul Graham quote, do things that don't scale. And I think when you start, you always start locally. You always have to start with how do I solve the problem in front of me? It's really hard to solve a problem on the other side of the world. I don't care how good you are. Uber starts in one city in San Francisco. WeWorku starts in one city in New York. And even if you're an internet company, right? Even if it's just software, it's there's a language, there's a team, there's a customer base. And so I think everywhere in the world you have to start locally. I think equally so, though, one of the advantages of building in the US versus other markets is that you have 300 plus million people across the country, across states, and you can immediately go to all of those customers. You have the ability to get to those customers because they do speak the same language. They do have the same payment rails. They have a lot of collaboration. And so you do get this advantage that when you're ready to go a little bigger, I live in a city that's 8 million people in New York. That's a good starting point, but whatever you're building needs more customers. But you can go from the 8 million to 80 million, to 150 million and go from there. When you're in these other startup hubs, and this is not just here in Slovakia, in Greece, it's almost anywhere. When you decide to go beyond that local hub, the first 8, 10 or 20 million people, you do have to make some pretty substantial changes. There's hires you need to make in the other countries. There may be translations, there may be technology changes. There may even be like cultural differences. Like we took WeWork to China, and I told this story before. We spent a lot of money on a firm that helped us translate WeWork to Chinese, right? It's a big deal. It's different language, different, letters, everything. And for those that know the WeWork story, one of our earliest slogans was this idea of do what you love. Work on things that you love doing. Do what you love was this thing. We had it on every wall, on every mug, on every t-shirt. And we went to China and we put these billboards up, and in Chinese, they said, do what you love. And we showed up and people looked up at the billboard and they were like, what does that mean? And we said, what do you mean? It's translated. We've paid a lot of money to have it translated. They're like, no, we know the words do what you love, but it doesn't mean anything in our culture. And so it's not just a technical or tactical challenge. When you go more international, it's cultural sometimes. And so for me, building in a place like New York versus elsewhere in some ways is easier because of this advantage. And in some ways it's harder because you're in a pool of 30,000 companies, right? 30,000 startups. Everybody's got an idea. Everybody wants to raise capital. And so sometimes being, big fish, like smaller body of water can be a good thing when you're launching.
So from investor perspective and point of view, you would like to see your startup balling and winning the local market, and then you will take it to a global level and help them?
Yeah. So I'd say for the first, I put it this way. I think founders should learn to focus. Just like every founder I know has a little bit of ADHD, a little bit of ADD. They want to do a lot of stuff. And there's this term, boiling the ocean. No one can boil the ocean. Not even Elon Musk can boil the ocean. I don't care. So I think if you start with this idea of focus, start with something that start in your backyard, start with people customers it's a great place to be and it's a great place to build. Until you reach, $5-10 million in revenue, it's really hard to lose that focus. It's really hard as a founder, as a CEO, to spread yourself thinner. Now, it's a sliding scale. It's not an exact number. I know people, I have a founder in my portfolio, when they hit $500,000 in revenue, they went global and it's worked well for them. However, building a company is like pushing a very large boulder up a very steep hill. And if you want to go international, it's like you've thrown a mudslide at it, a monsoon, the rain's coming down, there's sleet, there's ice. Why do that? You're already pushing this giant boulder up a large hill. And so I think ultimately, I would say start local, stay focused. And until you reach some level of scale, I wouldn't recommend expanding internationally. Far too many founders follow investors' advice though. So take it for what I've offered. I think you as a founder need to know your strengths. You need to know your market. There was a company that pitched at the Doers Summit yesterday that, has gone to 3 or 4 cities and countries in their first year of work. They're a mobility company. It seems to be working for them. They told me they're profitable. They told me they're growing. So, that may work in a smaller ecosystem, but it tends to shift focus away. It makes it harder to build.
Ahojte stupenci, ja som Katežinka a možno ma poznáte z Instagramu. V spolupráci s coworkom do Spot a Zapo, zábava v podcastoch, máme pre teba životný projekt. Si stredoškolák alebo stredoškolačka v Bratislavskom kraji a máš nápad, ktorý by mohol zmeniť svet alebo aspoň tvoju školu? Nečakaj, kým ti niekto povie, že na to máš. Vo Future Founders ťa hodíme rovno do hry. Dostaneš mentora, reálne skills od ľudí z praxe, office v Skyparku a čas postaviť svoj vlastný projekt. 8 mesiacov, ktoré môžu zmeniť tvoj život alebo aspoň tvoj životopis. Klikaj na www.futurefounders.sk a poď si to skúsiť.
Interesting story about WeWork is definitely that you are scaling service-ish real estate.
Yeah.
How did you think about let's take over the world? We are not SaaS tool.
Yeah, it's, I want to back founders who are irrational, generally speaking. I want them to be cult leaders, a good kind of cult leader, but a cult leader. I wanted to get people to follow them irrationally early. I want them to try things that seem impossible. That we had that in spades at WeWork. So if we had nothing else, we had that. We had irrational leadership. And so I think the assumption was that if you can make it in New York, you can make it work anywhere. The New York City real estate scene is very difficult. It's very old. It's very complicated. And so I think we viewed it as this singular challenge. If we can nail that, it'll work in most other markets. Now, I think we were probably, in some ways we were right. In other ways, we were wrong. One interesting thing that happened recently, I was talking to our previous general counsel at WeWorku, who is now a founder that I've backed. She's building a legal tech company. But one of the comments she made is that we built this automated AI-powered system 10 years ago for managing leases for buildings. And we built it for New York and San Francisco and LA and even London and Toronto. It turns out that, real estate deals anywhere in the world, China, India, they're all roughly the same. You take a building and then you pay for that building. Sometimes you get money up front. Sometimes you have a big security deposit. There's not a whole lot of moving pieces. So it turns out that being irrational early on and saying we can do it anywhere was probably the right move. It was probably the right mindset. But to be clear, we had no reason to believe that other than we showed up one day and said, we can probably do it anywhere.
All right. It's Jesse's quote as well. If I make it in New York, I can make
it. That's right. Yeah. We do call it a New York state of mind. And it is like entrepreneurs building in New York. I'm biased. I live there. I've been there 16 years. I built multiple companies there. But there's this New York state of mind, which is sort of, there's some amount of humbleness because you're in a massive city and some of the biggest ideas in the world have started there, and companies have been built there. And so you start off in this place where no matter how good you are, there's somebody down the block from you who's better. Like there's somebody who's done more, almost no matter who you are. It's kind of crazy if you think about it, but you can be anywhere in New York and your neighbor could be a billionaire hedge fund person. They could be an executive at an airline or whatever it is. They're all there. And so that New York state of mind is both some version of humble, but then also the fact that your neighbor could be anyone. You're like, well, I could be that neighbor. Like, I am also the person that could be that neighbor. And so I think we love founders with that mindset. You don't have to be in New York for that mindset. There are amazing founders all over the world. There's a guy that shared his story yesterday that sold one of the largest grocery delivery companies, in the Middle East. And, he started in Dubai. Like it's not a big market. It's not huge. And he crushed it, and it's an amazing story. So you can have that mindset anywhere. But we do think of it as a trait that we look for in founders.
Lex Friedman, in one podcast, he said that everybody should live in New York for quite a time, but they should know when to leave New York.
I haven't learned when to leave New York yet. So I travel a lot, but I'm raising 2 children there. I like even more now. I would agree with that. I think that, I grew up in a tiny town in the countryside. There were 100 houses in my town and sort of no stores, nothing going on. And I became sort of a global citizen after college. Like I hadn't really seen the world and met people from elsewhere for the most part. New York is a way to supercharge that. One of the things that I love for my son, who's about to turn 9 years old, is we walk out the door of our home and he can meet people from anywhere in the world. He can eat food from anywhere in the world. He can see people at all socioeconomic levels in the world. Again, all on that one block, all in the neighborhood. And that gives you this huge leap in the world where you're absorbing that at a moment in your life when that's all you can do. It's just everything is an input at that age. And so if you have the chance to be there when you're younger, it's amazing. And if you haven't, I would agree. If you get the chance to be there for, a few years to sort of see the hustle, to see the culture, to see the globalness of the city, it really helps you. It helps in recruiting. It helps in sales. These people on the streets selling, from the food trucks. Some of the biggest hustlers in the world. I love it. I mean that in a great way. They're building a life there. They're working with themselves and they're doing something that's really hard and they're solving a major problem for people. They're feeding them. This is a big deal. And so I do think that's something that's pretty special in New York. I'm sure you can find versions of it elsewhere, but like I said earlier, I'm a little biased. So I agree with Lex. You should live in New York.
And compared to Bay Area, they should have different skill set as a founder to live in those 2 ecosystems.
The New York Bay Area conversation. I'm not a Bay Area hater. However, look, I think one of the advantages to being in the Bay Area is when you are there, you can fully focus on tech. It's the only thing that's happening in the market, right? It's everyone that's around you. You sit at a cafe and you look to your left and somebody's pitching a VC. You look to your right, someone's hearing a pitch as a VC, right? That's it. The advantage of that is that you can focus. It goes back to my original comment. You can be in that bubble. You can just look at the thing in front of you and the talent is pretty amazing. So no knocks on that. I will say that in today's world of sort of AI forward companies and founders where people are using technology to be more efficient in their businesses, they're using AI to build software, to write code, to do design. More and more go to market is becoming the differentiator. So how do you get that first customer? How do you get your first 1,000 users? How do you get your first 100,000, members of your organization? In that way, you actually need diversity. If your product sells to early stage startup software engineers, the Bay Area is a good place to find customers. If your product sells to banks, if it sells to fashion, if it sells to retail, if it sells to media, you want to be as close to your customer as possible. You want to be as close to your partners as possible. You want to hire amazing people who understand your customers. And so when you compare sort of Bay Area and New York, what New York lacks in focus, because everything is around you, every industry, it comes in spades that every industry is around you. So, whatever the industries are selling to, whatever the sector is you're working in, you can hire amazing talent in that sector. You can sell into that industry, you can partner. And not for nothing, if you want to spend time in Europe, it's also easier. So it's got a plus side there too.
There are two words that resonate with me: focus and hustle. Let's first dig into focus, because right now, we have AI, we have a lot of distractions, ADHD, as you said. So, and you yourself, you are a board member of multiple companies.
Yeah.
So how to stay focused, and how do you like to see focus in your founders?
Yeah. So there's a saying that my dad used to say, which is, do what I say, not what I do. He's better about it now, but it's a little bit of that with founders, because as investors, as venture capitalists, as board members, our job is we need to diversify a portfolio. It's the only way to return a fund. So, I do one job and I do it well, which is I'm a venture capitalist, but the nature of the job is working with more than one company and sitting on more than one board and sort of navigating new deals and existing in LPs. What I think about founders, though, that their role should be singular. They are the founder of their company. They are the CEO of their company. That doesn't mean you won't do multiple jobs. By the nature of the role, you're going to have to do multiple jobs. I think in areas where you can focus, where you can draw in sort of the curtains and just look out the single window, I really encourage entrepreneurs to do it. It's really easy to look at all the cool, shiny stuff that's around. You mentioned, the AI stuff, everything's new. Use those tools to work on the thing you're focused on. So use the new tools, use the new shiny objects, but take that single thing you need to do. I have a founder today. He's been the CEO of a company that's gone from 0 to $10 million in revenue in the last 2 years. He's got a great team. And at one point he was trying to lead sales and marketing and go to market, but he was also trying to lead product, and he was also fundraising, and he was also managing. And at one point I just sat down with him and I said, number one, what do you think you're the best at? And he was like, hands down, go to market. He's like, he has an amazing podcast. He's got a great brand. People love him, and he gets marketing. He understands marketing. And I said, okay, that's great. I said, I agree with you. I said, so what's your favorite part of your day? And he said, the 12 to 12:30 Monday to Friday where I record my podcast. I said, this is perfect. You love what you do. I said, so do that one thing and hire excellent talent around you. It's easier to do that once you've raised capital, or once you're making revenue, or once you're profitable. But even in the earliest days, find founders co-founders who complement you. So if you're incredible at go-to-market, find an amazing technical co-founder. If they're amazing at tech, but not so great at talking, find an amazing co-founder who can do the fundraising, who can do the pitching. It's really finding ways to optimize for the thing you're great at and the thing you love doing. And if you can find this overlap, it's super easy to focus. Ultimately, I have to say to founders, do what I say, not what I do, because they can look at me and say, yeah, but you're here in Greece right now while you're also fundraising, while you're also closing a deal. Yeah, I work a different job. So I think as a founder, it's pretty clear, do that single thing.
Pamäť je ako stroj.
Standing ovation v Benátkach.
A nie je bezchybný.
Cesta na Oscara.
Michal je dobrý manžel.
A teraz slovenské kiná.
Otec je film podľa skutočných udalostí, ktoré sa dejú na celom svete. Príbeh muža, ktorý prišiel o všetko.
Film, ktorý ťa vtiahne a nepustí. Film, o ktorom budeš premýšľať ešte dlho po odchode z kina.
Otec. Už teraz v slovenských kinách.
Yeah, from looking at you and your career, it's I want to be like Jesse. Fundraising, doing multiple stuff is a cool thing. I just don't want to focus on one thing. It could be boring. The world is full of opportunities. It's colorful. I don't want to be just one CEO for one thing. I want to have this LinkedIn profile and go into the podcast, And
I should delete that profile. It's funny. Right now I'm doing more than one thing. When we were building WeWork, we worked 17 hours a day, for basically 7 years straight, almost 7 days a week. Our management meetings for WeWork were Sunday nights from 8 p.m. until 3 or 4 in the morning. And then we go to the office at 7 or 8 a.m. and start working, and sometimes we'd sleep there, whatever it was. I don't recommend that version either. However, there was a long time where I did one thing at a time. I had one role in the company at a time. I did that thing. I finished that thing. I hired leadership around that. Before that, I ran technology for a public company. I had one role. I led technology for that business. I did different things around that role, did different things around that department, but that's the thing I did. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have extracurriculars. It doesn't mean that your side hustle, if you will, can't be something a little bit different. It doesn't mean that you can't also do a podcast on the side. But when you think about where is 90% of your energy going? That's the focus. And so if there are other things that you do well, that you enjoy doing, I think you can fill that space. You can use it as an extracurricular. Some people take up golf or tennis. Other people take up making a podcast, do that. But the energy that you put out there, you get back what you put out there, right? And so I think if you're going to build a company, you need to put as much of the energy as you can into that thing as possible, while balancing out the fact that as human beings, we have other needs. We have needs to learn, to grow, to be with family, friends, have a community. And so, the perfect mix is do those side things that are also beneficial to your business. That's what this founder does that I was mentioning that has the podcast. He started as a podcast in the automotive space. He built a company around it. The podcast drives an insane amount of traffic to the startup, and the startup creates content that he then uses in the podcast. So he loves doing the podcast, and that's a side thing. And that's another thing that he does, but it all benefits this sort of singular focus, which is he wants to build a massive company and he wants to change the world with it.
What is the reason you brought this topic? Let's live the life as well. Let's not hustle that much. Let's not stay in the office until 3 a.m.
Yeah.
What's the reason?
Yeah. So I know a lot of founders who have burned out over the years, who have hit a wall, right? They've worked 17 hours a day. They've done that thing. I was fortunate. I never knew that I burn out if I burn out. Maybe I did, and I didn't recognize that I was too in the weeds. But I think one of the challenges is if I look back, there's a lot of my life during my mid 20s, early 30s that I sort of look back on, and it's all a blur. I don't remember a lot of it. I have a very good friend who swears to me that I was at her wedding, and I kind of don't remember going to the wedding. And I was probably at the wedding and making calls, checking emails, solving problems, whatever it is, right? And also drinking, because that doesn't help. But I think as I look back on it, I think what are the things that actually made me successful? It wasn't all of the sort of being in the office till, 3 a.m. That's not actually what brought the success. I go back to this comment that it was the focus. If I do one thing and I do it really well, I can be successful at that. If I use technology and tools like AI to do that job better, it means I can actually free up more time to do things that are able to elevate me in other ways, personally, mentally, physically. And I think that what we've wound up in is this hustle culture where everybody is working all the time. If you're doing anything other than work, you're not going to make it, right? The next person's working harder than you. She's working faster than you. She's working better than you. I think that doesn't have to be the truth. It certainly doesn't have to be the truth forever. There's periods of times you need to be in the office. You got to be there. You got to close that deal. But you've got a goal. You have a focus in that moment. And then when you're done that, you need to take your head, pick your head up, look around and find things that fulfill you. And so the beauty of building WeWork is that the business itself was being surrounded by tens of thousands of other entrepreneurs who became some of my closest friends. So I had this benefit that I could work all hours and be surrounded by the people that I cared about. I still do that today. I've created a space where in my office in New York, it's half of it is my team and half of it are my best friends who are working on other projects, not companies that have invested. And so I want to show up every day at the office, to show up early and work late and do the work and make the calls and have the meetings. But I also want to be surrounded by people that I enjoy. I want to have conversations about things that aren't just about work. And so for me, coming out to this conference, the topic that I think a lot about is over the last number of years, I found sobriety has changed my life. I found therapy has changed my life. And I found sort of very focused time spent with family has changed my life. And, hindsight's 20/20. But if I look back and I think to myself, would I have been able to be just as successful? Would I have been able to build what I had built or done what I'd done had I taken a little bit more time with family? Had I cut back on drinking? Had I slept a little bit more? I think the answer is yes. We know a lot of founders who have done that. I know a lot of venture capitalists that have done that. and they wake up every day and love what they do, but they also don't find burnout to be the sort of end goal, the place they're going to hit the rock bottom, if you will. And I just think that lives a healthier life, and it means you can live a longer life and you can live a better life with your family and friends. And frankly, I think we should all have that.
My friend told me the interesting story of him. He was CEO and board member of one company. He maybe wasn't that familiar with the industry and with the other co-founder. He said he was trying all the techniques like meditation, massages, spa, running, podcast, whatever. He was still kind of sick of it. And after he finally decided, okay, I'm quitting this job, I'm quitting this person, it was a huge relief.
Yeah. It can be the people around you that cause you stress. I think you have to be intellectually honest with yourself. You have to be emotionally honest with yourself. Sort of what is it that is the problem? I recommend that people start by looking at themselves. It's easy to point fingers, to look at yourself, figure out what could you change. But there are certainly teams that I've met and even teams that I've invested in where the relationships with the founders have been more toxic than not. Again, I think everybody can survive for a little while, right? We can all hold our breath for a bit, right? And so some people can do it longer than others. But at some point, you run out of air, you run out of oxygen, right? You need to find a break. And so, look, being a founder isn't for everyone. Being a co-founder isn't for everyone. I go back to this comment that I made earlier around finding sort of like your better half, like finding if you're great at go to market, finding the technical talent. The same thing could be said about the sort of EQ side, the emotional side. Like if you're a high anxiety, kind of stressed out, but you just work kind of founder, maybe a great co-founder for you is somebody who, taps the brakes a little bit and says, hey, why don't we actually go out and get some dinner? That work's still going to be there later. You don't have to eat at your desk for a seventh night in a row. We can go out. I think the balance is sort of there. It's possible. And I think the important thing, I just want to be clear on like what we're talking about. Living a more balanced life, living a healthier life doesn't mean you don't work hard. Like that is the thing. Like one of the things at WeWorku that was amazing is yes, we were there at all hours, but we had dinner with our friends every night. We had drinks with our friends every night. It was at WeWorku. We had a space to do that. We'd go down the block. So it didn't feel like work. 17 hours flew by. I teach my son about the fact that and one day when my daughter's early enough, they say time flies when you're having fun. I was working on WeWorku for 6 years, almost 7 years. I've been now a venture capitalist for almost 9 years. It doesn't feel like that time. I've been in New York for 16 years. I feel like I just moved to New York. It doesn't feel like that. And so you can work very hard. You can also balance it with things that bring you a bit of joy, that give you a little bit of space. And at the end of the day, the space may actually help you. The space may help you be creative. If you're staring at a problem and you haven't been able to look at it from another direction, taking a break can be helpful. Taking that break could mean you could spend time learning something else that could help you in the work you're doing today. And, there's the speed at which technology is changing. I find a lot of our smartest founders, one of the challenges with never picking their head up is that by the time they do, the world around them has changed. They've been trying to solve a problem that's been solved. And so giving yourself that space may make you a better founder. And if you think about that going into the point of do one thing, do it well, like that's your job. It's to be the CEO. It's to be the founder. And so if that can help you do it better, I think that's where the balance comes in.
Slovenské ulice sú plné príbehov. Na niektoré z nich by sa najradšej zabudlo. Ale každý príbeh skrýva ponaučenie.
Vražedné psyché.
Dedov archív.
Naživo.
Zo skutočných prípadov legendy forenznej psychiatrie doktora Svetozára Drobu.
4 mesta, 4 unikátne prípady, ktoré zapadali prachom.
A experti, ktorí objasňujú súvislosti.
Prvá zastávka 19. októbra Bratislava. Neptún klub na Kolárskej ulici.
Vražedné psyché naživo.
Vstupenky nájdeš na zapotur.sk.
What have you changed in your personality or characteristic switching from the founding team to be an investor and picking up the other founders?
Yeah. I've made a couple of very substantial changes in my life for the better. One is I got sober a few years ago. And so for those who know the story of WeWorku, there was a lot of alcohol around WeWorku. It wasn't the only thing, but it's a lot of the story. I woke up one day and just kind of realized like I had enough. I probably had enough alcohol for a lifetime in those, 7 to 10 years. It's made everything that I do far easier. It's made my life clearer.
Was it like a work hard, play hard culture?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it was a work hard, play hard, and then work harder culture. And so, you know, I think that one of the changes that I made for myself was getting sober. Another change was finding an amazing therapist, just someone to talk to. And again, it doesn't take a lot. It's 40 minutes every 2 weeks for me. It's not a lot of time. But when I leave that session, if there's been one thing that's been weighing on my mind, I feel better, right? I've learned tools and tricks to managing stress and anxiety and difficult moments with my business partners, with founders, even with my wife. And so therapy and sobriety are two things I've changed. I think from how I operate, the biggest thing is that you have to be okay losing. As an entrepreneur, you can't really be okay losing. You have that singular goal and you need to win. I mean, most won't, but you need to have the mindset of I'm going to win. Venture capital is a business of, you know, portfolio. There's this concept of power law. And so I will back 30 to 40 companies in a fund, and the majority of those companies won't succeed. I will look at 1,500 pitch decks in a year. I will meet with 500 founders, and then I will invest in 4 or 5 of them. The majority of the deals I look at, I won't choose to invest in, or I won't win them. I might not be the best investor for them. I may not win the founder. It's the nature of being a venture capitalist is mostly losing. And when you win, it's the outlier that wins. So we make all of our upside for our investors and for ourselves on 1 or 2 companies. In our first fund, that was MongoDB. You know, in our second fund is a company called FalconX. Not that we didn't win in any others, but they're so outsized. They're such outliers. They kind of can make up for everything else. That's a very difficult mindset for a founder or operator to switch to. And I will tell you that a lot of my peers in the same era, in the sort of 2015, 2016, 2017, who went and moved into venture capital after selling their businesses, you know, exiting, whatever it is, the vast majority of them have gone back to operating. They found that venture capital and venture investing it's just a different pace. It's a different work style. And for those who have spent their lives like singular focused on like, I need to win, every one of those little cuts, you know, it's like 1,000 paper cuts. You know, it's like that every time you lose a deal, every time a company doesn't make it, you need to get this mindset where it's like, no, that's actually the job. My singular job is to back a lot of companies and assume that most won't win, so that I get the chance to back the crazy founder, the cult leader who does win.
I mean, when you are talking about these statistics, it's crazy that somebody is doing this job. And I remember we were visiting the Sequoia or A16Z office. It was last April, Friday night, and we come into the reception. There was nobody there, but it was all the stickers of Airbnb, LinkedIn, like everybody who made it, they have the money in it. So that's the thing. Like, I want to be like A16Z. I want to be like Sequoia, these guys, but failure rate is...
You should ask them to see the whole portfolio, okay? They've been doing this a long time. There are probably, you know, for every one name that's on that wall, I bet that they have 50 to 100 names that you'll never have heard of. Like, it's really that high. Maybe it's 50, maybe it's not 100, but that is the business. Like, we don't know. The greatest founder in the world can have failures. And frankly, the less than great founder, probably not the worst founder. The worst founder doesn't have wins. He probably doesn't get wins, but the less than great founders of the world also have winners. It's so much of this business winds up being luck. It's timing. It's luck in timing. It's luck in hiring. It's luck in technology innovation. There's so many things that 24 months ago you couldn't have built, were impossible, that are now possible. So if you happen to start your business 3 years ago, maybe you didn't make it. If you started it today, you're doing 100 million in revenue. It's like that. So I think like that kind of timing and luck, it plays out for everyone. You can stack some of the luck up. You can have a winner, and then that winner begets, higher quality people. But ultimately, that is the business that we're in, and it's what everyone's playing. That is the business that A16Z is in. That's the business that Sequoia is in. It's the business that we're in.
Where do you see future of work will look like? Since you are building the working station, the coolest offices in the place, you're working from New York, where everybody is just sprinting on the streets. And now we have the AI revolution and productivity hacks. Where do you see this going?
First off, this space that we're recording in right now is a pretty cool workspace. So I would work here. This would be my future of work. But Look, I am a firm believer that in the earliest days of building a company, you need to be physically close to the people that you work with, including your customers. I have a really hard time imagining massive successes of totally distributed teams from day one. It does happen. So like there are examples of it, but I think that you could stack the deck in your favor if you sit around each other, you see the problems together, you whiteboard and you build. So I think as we go forward, you're going to see very tight-knit small teams of people still coming together in a physical space to build. As they grow their teams, whether it be humans or agents, like AI agents that they add to their sort of team and their arsenal to succeed, you can start to find that spreading out. You can find the amazing engineer who's great at working on their own, solving a problem somewhere else in the world. And they're good at being a remote employee. They're good at being a collaborator from afar. You can find the agentic, agent. You can find an agent that helps you to solve SDR problems and early sales problems that runs in a cloud somewhere that isn't your own technology. It's not your own product, but it solves a problem for you. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to pull both of those things together to create a cohesive product and a cohesive business. And so for me, the future of work is you're going to find distributed employees. You're going to find distributed agents. But I think you're going to continue to find that your core team needs to be together on a very regular basis. And as you get bigger, you're going to have to find pods that you can create that. And if you decide to be a little more distributed, great. Make an office elsewhere and have people in that geography. We are seeing founders today with less and less human capital to do the same work they would have done before using AI. To use an American baseball analogy, we're in like the bottom of the first inning when it comes to AI. Like we're so early in the world of AI. So far, these are like super powered productivity tools. That's what they are. ChatGPT, amazing. It's so good. Salesforce's Agentforce, so good for many things. But you still need to choose to use them. You still need to tell them what to do. You still need to bring them into your fold. You have to give them your tone, your culture, your brand, and you need to monitor them. It means that you can do 5 or 10 times more than you used to be able to do as a human. But we're not in a world yet where you can just hand over the keys, right? The one-man billion-dollar company, as Sam Altman talks about, we're not there yet. We're not there quite yet. Maybe we'll get there, and I would not bet against Sam. But we are in a place where we see multiple founders who have less than 10 employees doing 10, 20, 30, $40 million a year in revenue. So much of that is driven by these tools and AI. So you can have one person managing customer service, and that person can be solving thousands of customers' problems. You can have one person managing marketing, and that person can be running thousands of campaigns. But you still have that person. They have taste, they have a tone, they have a desire, and they're sort of giving those instructions. And so we're not yet ready to blow up the entire world of work, but we are finding a place where it's smaller teams, more focused, with more superpowers and firepower with these agentic workflows. And that we're not going to see slow down.
And I remember from the trip to Bay Area, I was Tim Draper on stage and he was representing a Draper's Fund. He said, "Hey founders, we have a lot of SaaS tools. Everything is solved. All the CRMs, please solve the real issues. Diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, all those stuff. So we have a fund. We will support you, but please no more SaaS tools." What is your investor point of view? Hey founders, I'm here, but please give me something.
So look, Tim's had an amazing venture career. So I'm sure he has many more insights than I do. I personally am of the mindset, I'm a never say never kind of person. So I think that people who speak in uncertainties should certainly be avoided. And I think that nothing is solved. I can't think of a single problem in the world where I would look at it today and I'd say, that must be the best way to solve this, and it will never be improved from here on out. I'm sure we thought that when the first wheel was made, and look where we are today. We have somewhat self-driving cars. But I will say that there's less work that has to be done at the foundational layer. So the idea of storing data, we understand how to store data. There may be various ways. We're investors in MongoDB. Maybe there are great ways to make storing data better, post a Mongo world. But that's not going to be the roadblock or the impediment typically to solving the next problem up on the stack. And so what I will say, I would agree with, if I read into, the comment that you shared from Tim, is that there are problems that are more acute. There are problems that are more in the real world. They don't have to be healthcare. Every successful founder, by the way, their next thing is to solve healthcare. So maybe go build one company, and when you're successful, go solve healthcare. But I will say that, solve creative problems, solve interesting problems, solve more acute problems, get more focused. That's a good way to build. I think it's a good way to think about it. This goes back to sort of not boiling the ocean. Pick one problem and solve for that. If your deep passion is in changing the way that people sell SaaS tools, by all means, do what you love doing. Try to make it better. I don't think we solved it. I don't think that Salesforce is the ultimate CRM of the world. It's got problems. I don't think that Gmail is the ultimate email client. It's got problems, right? So that wouldn't be my view. And so if a founder is coming to me, what I'm looking for is a matchup of sort of passion and power. And so I want you to have a reason to win. I want you to have that mindset. You want to win. I want you to have a reason to have an edge there. And I want you to have passion about that problem that you're solving. And I think if those two things go together, solve any problem you want. I'm not here to tell you what to solve. We may or may not agree, and I may or may not be the right fit. I told you the funnel, 1,500 decks. I back 4 or 5 people. I'm probably not the fit, but you will find somebody who is the fit. You'll find somebody who agrees with your passion, who agrees with your view of the world. And there are plenty of investors, myself included, who have backed productivity tools and things like that. And I've also backed healthcare platforms and problems, and platforms that are helping to solve cancer.
You said
yeah.
Okay. Just one more question.
Cool. Good timing. The suspense is killing me. How many of these do you film, by the way? How often do you film these usually? I know here you did a few, but.
So far, it's 60 plus.
Okay.
60 plus. It took me 2 years.
Okay. Cool.
I'm fascinated by the founder's investor's journey, and I'm fascinated by asking questions.
Yeah, it's a good quality.
Yeah, like through me, the information are distributed. So that's my passion for now. We'll see if AI will take over my voice as well and elevate it.
I mean, you can use it as a tool to do more.
Yeah,
so,
true. And do it in Spanish, Chinese.
Exactly. HeyGen is a really cool platform.
Oh yeah, I was trying that.
Yeah, you can be publishing this in 60 languages tomorrow.
And actually, I'm thinking why I'm not already doing it, because I found HeyGen 5 months ago, and I never
the quality is very high. It's very good. So,
and the last thing that comes to my mind is you are never say never guy, but is Jesse Middleton in the position that I want to build one more unicorn myself?
No. I do not fall in the camp of my peers who went from operator or founder to venture capitalist and back. I love almost everything that I do when I wake up, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep now, the kind of work that I do, the kinds of people I get to work with. One of my personal values that I've learned about myself over the last 5 or 6 years has been freedom is very high on my list. And freedom means different things to different people. For me, freedom is the ability to choose to spend the waking hours of my day, and to be fair, where I sleep, doing the things that I want to be doing, spending time with the people that I want to be spending it with. And for me, what I do as venture capitalist is something that I find joy in sort of every part, whether it's finding a founder, convincing them to work with me, winning the deal, supporting that founder through their journey, even in the moments where that conversation is they want to shut the company down, right? I've gotten comfortable with failure. I've gotten comfortable with the fact that most of the companies won't make it. And I've gotten comfortable with the fact that my role is to be there as a support pillar for founders. I want to be there as the first call, whether it's about work or not. I've been divorced and remarried. I've had multiple children. I've had successes. I've had plenty of failures. And for me, I want to bring that to founders. And so in what I do today, I get to work with dozens of founders at a time. I've worked with hundreds of founders over my angel and venture career and my time with WeWorku. And so for me, I don't want to be the creator and the builder of that thing, of the next unicorn. I want to be the investor in that next unicorn. I want to be the supporter. I want to be next to the founder 15 years later when they're on their 3rd or 4th or 5th venture saying, you remember what we did back then? You remember how that worked? You remember that feeling you had? Let's do that again, right? Or you remember that feeling you had? Let's not do that again. You remember how you never took a vacation day in your first company? Take a vacation day. I worked on this project as an aside called the Founder's Pledge. It's the Founder Mental Health Pledge. And the idea is to put it into like term sheets, right? To kind of say, as an investor, I'm giving you the okay to take care of yourself mentally. Spend a little bit of money and time on your mental health, therapy, executive coach, travel, a spa, whatever it is. Just like you spend money on your health insurance, just like you might spend money on the gym for physical fitness, spend it on yourself as a founder as well. Spend a little bit or a lot if you need it. And for me, I want to be the person who's there 10 or 20 years from now next to my 1,000th founder that I'm helping, saying, take the time to take care of yourself. Tell me if you've got a problem. Don't carry the burden entirely alone. And as a founder, the only person you can talk to about the real problems is your co-founder or somebody who sits slightly outside of the company, but who understands your journey, which is usually me, your investor or board member. And so you can't wake up and talk to your employees about a lot of these problems. You know, it's not comfortable to tell your employees, you know what? I really didn't want to come into the office today. I'm feeling pretty crappy. Like, you can't tell your team that. You shouldn't tell your team that, by the way. You're putting a burden on them. Best case scenario, they step up and they work harder, but now you've put a burden on them that isn't their job. Their job isn't to carry the company. Their job is to do their job. In the worst case scenario, they look at that and they say, you know what? I didn't want to get out of bed either. I'm going to stay home tomorrow. I'm going to work less. You know, and so I think at the end of the day, I can be that sounding board. And that is the thing that I want to focus on for the rest of my career, you know, and frankly, probably the rest of my life. Like, I can't imagine not doing what I do now. So I don't know where retirement looks for me one day, but like I can see myself doing this very far into my life, and just every single experience I have builds on my ability to then share that advice again with founders. So if I get to back you 10 years from now, I'll be way more valuable than I am today to you as a founder.
Yeah, we'll have multiple Jesse Middleton agents.
That's right.
Around the world, speaking Chinese, French, sharing.
My business partner, Jeff, teaches at Harvard Business School, and he recently created an agent trained on his books, all of his syllabus, all of his case studies, and sort of all of his lesson plans for the last 12 or 13 years. And his students love it because the case studies are on some of the best founders and the worst founders that we've ever backed. And so, like, you can actually talk to Jeff 24 hours a day, and this agent today using audio, text, and video. And you can say, hey, I've got this huge challenge. I'm thinking about breaking up with my co-founder. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? How do I do that? And you can actually hear Jeff's advice. So yes, one of these days I'll put that together for myself. For now, I answer my phone.
Jesse, appreciate your time. Amazing.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Zábava v podcastovách.